And for more on former President Trump's speech from CPAC, I do want to welcome in our panel NewsNation political contributor Chris Hahn and former Republican Congressman Rodney Davis. Welcome, both of you. And let's start with you, Congressman Davis. The former president, of course, gearing up for his 2024 run here. Give us your take on his speech tonight from CPAC.
Well, that was a typical speech from former President Trump. Look, not many people in politics, let alone America, can weave in a reference to Silence of the Lambs when a majority of Republicans in this nation think that he's cannibalizing the Republican Party's chances to get back into the White House. However, he has a record, and it's a very successful record as the former president, and he's going to be able to tout it.
Well, Chris, your reaction to former President Trump's speech tonight?
You know, he ain't Mick Jagger. He needs to come up with a new song. Seems to me like he's saying the same thing over and over again. And a lot of it's about him. And I'm sure Congressman Davis will agree with me. The American people want it to be about them, not about the candidate. And Donald Trump's got a lot of grievances. They're mostly personal grievances. The American people want to know what he could do for them to make their lives better. And they want to hear some details, not just platitudes, which is all we ever hear from this man.
Mr. Davis, quick response to that before our next question.
You know, Chris is right. Americans do want details, but that's what the campaign's for. And in the end, you saw a Republican primary in 2016 where Donald Trump, as a brand new candidate, got an outsized amount of attention. He was able to ride that earned media magic carpet to the nomination. And then Democrats, I remember my Senator Dick Durbin making fun of who would be Donald Trump's cabinet. And you know what? Donald Trump won because the Democrat candidate was one of the worst they've ever chosen.
And Mr. Davis, to your point, back in 2016, we did see Trump do this, take down his Republican opponents one by one, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, down the line. I believe we have actually a soundbite from that. Let's listen to it quickly.
It's always the same thing.
You defrauded the
challenged on a point.
Little Marco.
But you're not beating Hillary. So you're not beating Hillary.
Well, then if I can't beat her, you're really going to get killed, aren't you? Jeb doesn't really believe I'm unhinged. He said that very simply because he has failed in this campaign. It's been a total disaster. He was such a nice guy. And he said, oh, I'm never going to attack. But then his poll numbers tanked. That's why he's on the end.
So, Mr. Davis, I know you said this was a typical Trump speech tonight, and yet we did not quite see him calling people out by name in this manner. What is stopping him from doing the same thing this time around?
Well, they weren't there. The ones that he wants to take out now weren't at CPAC. We saw an historic low number of people compared to what CPAC has been able to bring in when Donald Trump spoke in years past. And that's likely a direct result of the allegations against the person who runs CPAC, Matt Schlapp. So in the end, we'll see if attending the CPAC convention is going to hurt any candidate who was there based upon what happens in the litigation involving Mr. Schlapp or not. But it was clearly down. It was a hometown crowd. He didn't have to go beat anybody up because they weren't around.
Well, Mr. Davis, let me ask you, not just at CPAC, but what about down the line? Do you think Trump has changed his tune, learned a lesson, changed his tactics, or are you expecting to see that same sort of behavior, the names that he invents for people down the line this time around as well?
There's one thing consistent about former President Trump. He never changes.
Chris, I want to ask you about Florida Governor DeSantis because he was not there at CPAC tonight, one of several presumptive 2024 candidates skipping the event entirely. What message is DeSantis sending to Trump by skipping tonight?
I think he's saying that CPAC doesn't matter. It's really not an ideological thing anymore. I mean, back in the day, you know, you would actually have real debates about what conservatism was at CPAC. Now it's about stealing elections. It's about Trump. It's about grievance. It's not really about the conservative movement as it was when Ronald Reagan went there, when George Herbert Walker Bush and W. Bush went there. It is a very different event. And I think Ron DeSantis is saying, I don't really need Matt Schlapp and his grift. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do my own thing. And I actually think that's a smart move because he doesn't have that crowd at CPAC. But that said, I think once he actually gets in the ring with Donald Trump, he is going to face a lot of the same problems that everyone else who's challenged him in the Republican Party have. and it's probably not going to end well for him either.
And Chris, let's stay with you. One more question. You know, the only other Republican to officially enter the 2024 race at this point, Nikki Haley, both she and Mike Pompeo made some veiled jabs at former President Trump. How did those land? And are either of them ready to take on the former president?
I think Nikki Haley would be a compelling general election candidate for the Republicans. I think she would have a lot of crossover appeal. I do not think she's going to get out of a Republican Party. Mike Pompeo's jabs at former President Trump backfired dramatically because he was making fun of an administration he was a central figure in. It was amazing to me to watch him attack the policies that he so vigorously supported for 4 years while he was, Secretary of State and CIA director under Trump. He really doesn't really lack any, his self-awareness is lacking dramatically, if you ask me.
All right, Chris Hahn, NewsNation political contributor, former Republican Congressman Rodney Davis. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.